What is up, San Antonio Spurs fans? Welcome to TSR Sports. Saw this article on Clutch Points today and want to talk to you about it. Two potential trade candidates for the San Antonio Spurs entering the 2021 training camp. One of these players we already talked about a little bit, but I'm also going to look at Clutch Points' view and give my 2 cents on it. The other player hadn't crossed my mind as a potential trade candidate, so that's why I really wanted to jump on this article. I was like, things that make you go, all right, I'm going to talk about this today. Of course, let me know your thoughts down below, especially with the second player since we haven't discussed him. Hit that thumbs up if you'd like to support the channel and subscribe for more Spurs content. Let's do this. The first player is not practice. We ain't in here talking about practice. We're talking about Ben Simmons. This one has been talked about at length with the Spurs community, online, Look, let me just put this out there before we get into the article. It's actually the first thing they mention in this article. Ben Simmons is not in training camp, so he seems like he could be a headache for whichever team he may go to, or if he stays with Philly, continue to be a headache. And we, as Spurs fans, have already experienced a nightmare with one of our players turning into a headache and eventually being traded, which really, I don't want to say derailed the franchise, but it kind of did. It kind of threw us off, and I don't know if we've totally recovered from it as of yet. I'm recovered as in I'm over what happened, but the team itself has kind of taken steps backwards since that trade. And I just don't want another disgruntled player. Maybe Ben Simmons. I don't know the whole situation in Philly. Maybe if he goes somewhere else, he'll be cool. He'll be happy, and this nonsense will be done. That being said, let's get into the meat of the article, or veggies. So anyway, Ben Simmons. With this trade, it is pretty much universal. I think people agree that if the Spurs were to obtain Ben Simmons, we would have to trade DeJounte Murray, which sucks because I really do like DeJounte. But we would also have to give up some of our young pieces, and I'm not sure which young pieces we would have to give up. A starter like Kelvin Johnson, currently a role player like Devin Vassell who's coming off the bench, somebody that's only played in the G League, Trey Jones, Luka Samanic. We're going to be looking for Joshua Primo, which would make no sense for the Spurs to trade him already, and I would punch my wall, probably, because I'd really use your lottery pick on a guy you're trading. What? So I don't know who we would have to give up with DeJounte Murray, but I'm pretty sure we'd have to give up at least one more player, plus not lottery picks, plus draft picks that maybe will be lottery protected, maybe not. And I just feel like Philly's going to ask for more than the Spurs want to give up. Spurs historically are not a team that trades much, if at all. And if they're asking for 2 to 3 players plus 2 to 3 picks, I think San Antonio is going to be like, yeah, I don't think so. Let's continue on with the article. And they do say they feel Simmons is one of the brightest young stars in the NBA. He is a 3-time All-Star. And yes, he does have some shooting issues, especially at the free throw line, which people still give him a lot of crap for that. But he had an abysmal Shaq-esque outing during last season's playoffs and was just putrid at the line. Let's keep going. Offensively, Simmons is one of the most gifted passers and playmakers in the NBA. It should be someone Coach Pop will enjoy mentoring. He's 6'11", 240. He's got size, length, athleticism, and speed. So that's a heck of a combination. And he's only 25, and he is one of the most versatile defensive players in the league. And I would agree with that. He can guard the 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know if he guards the 5 at all. I don't watch Sixers games, but if he can guard any position, looking at his size, maybe he can. That is versatility. One thing the Spurs have struggled with the last few seasons is having some really bad defensive lapses. Spurs fans, I'm sure you remember, unfortunately, there's been a lot of games where we're up by 10 and then the defense just disappeared, and a lot of times the offense disappeared too, up by 10, down by 10, just like that. Frustrating as all heck. He's not a great three-point shooter, which, we're not a team that launches up 100 threes anyway. So, I'll tell you this. And the last thing I'm going to talk about on Ben Simmons, if the Spurs trade for him, I will support him. I'll root for him. He'll now be wearing a Spurs uniform. So, yes, I'm going to hope he does well. I just hope that if this trade does happen, we don't give up the farm and he doesn't turn into a locker room headache for the organization over the next few months or year. If he comes here, hopefully he stays happy, helps us win some games, and heck, if he can turn us around into a playoff team, then I'll be like, hey, I was wrong. It worked out good for us. But the other player I want to talk about, Colin Sexton, and this is not one that I had thought about at all. Here's what Clutch Points had to say. The Cleveland Cavaliers are unsure whether they want to give Colin Sexton a fat contract when he becomes a restricted free agent next summer. With Cleveland's hesitant to pay the incoming fourth-year guard, they may just look to move him at some point. Could they look to move him now? I don't know. Let's keep moving forward. In terms of a potential deal, the Spurs could construct a package consisting of some of their young wing players. And Spurs fans, And it hurts me to say this, but we got young players that are very similar with Derek White and Lonnie Walker, Devin Vassell, Calvin even. Eventually, at some point, somebody's going to have to go. I don't know who. Plus, you got Joshua Primo waiting in the wings, no pun intended. So somebody's going to go from our young core. It's going to happen. Anyway, Spurs, meanwhile, sorely need someone who addressed their dire need for scoring. That's true. DeMar DeRozan's led the team in scoring every year he's been there. We don't have a guy that's averaged 20 points per game, I think, ever in his career. Correct me if I'm wrong, but doing a quick up and down of the roster in my head, I don't think anybody's averaged 20. Sexton averaged 24.3 points last season. So he could definitely fit that scoring need that we need right now. He's also he's 22? No, he's 22. 47% from the field in each of his past 2 seasons, and a career just under 39% shooter from the arc, which is something else we need. Our three-point shooting has been blah. And while the team is not one of those teams, again, that's going to launch 100 threes a game, having some guys that can nail the three and spread the floor for our guys that drive to the hoop would certainly be intriguing. And if he's our shooting guard, that also would have him teamed up with DeJounte Murray. DJ and Colin Sexton in the backcourt is very intriguing. The question is, who would have to go? And I like Derek White too. So right now the backcourt to me is DJ and Derek, but some of you have sent this in the comments, and I'll acknowledge you might be right. We might be sentimental with these players, especially if they were drafted by San Antonio as opposed to a player that's drafted somewhere else, plays for that team for a few years, and then comes over. I think we all, or at least myself, I can say, I don't look at them right away as a true Spur because I'm like, you didn't start here. But you know what? Probably, at least me, I probably shouldn't have that mentality because you can't control who you're drafted by. There could be a player, maybe Colin Sexton was a San Antonio Spurs fan growing up. He can't control that he was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he sure as heck is not going to turn down a contract to play in the NBA. I don't think most players wouldn't. So there could be players out there that always wanted to play for this franchise. Doug McDermott seems like he's wanted to play for Pop and now finally get the chance. So I shouldn't look at them as not true Spurs because just because they weren't drafted, they're here now. And I've had that attitude a little bit, and I think some others did towards DeMar DeRozan. It's like he's a Raptor, he's not a Spur. But eventually I got over that with DeMar. I'm like, no, he's a Spur. Now he's a Bull. So by the time I finally got over that, he left the team. But that being said, I think anybody that comes to the roster, whether Ben Simmons, Colin Sexton, just embrace them and say, yep, they're here now, they're a Spur, and let's root for them. Because I'm very guilty sometimes, at least in my head. Not vocal about it, but in my head, I'm like, you weren't drafted by us, and that shouldn't matter. So, my friends, again, what do you think? I know we talked about Ben Simmons, but Colin Sexton, is that a player you'd want to bring on the roster? And if we were able to get the trade done, what would you give up? One player, one bench player, or one starter, one bench player, and a draft pick. 2 young players and a draft pick. A young player and 2 draft picks. Would you have 3 picks? Maybe a first and 2-2. I'll probably have to give up a little more than that for guys averaging just under 25 points per game. But it's intriguing. I have no idea what's going to happen before the season starts. We still have too many players on our roster, so if there's any trade news, I will make sure I get a video up as soon as possible. So make sure you ring that bell too when you are subscribing. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. And as always, go Spurs, go!